Hello, my friend. How are you?
Doing good, Nicole. Good to see you.
Good to see
Good
you.
to see you.
Hi, guys. It's Dave and Nicole again. Back at Wait,
I,
how do my lips look? New product alert. New product for me alert.
yes.
And I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Daryl, Derol. Amazing. Random internet splurge. I just was like, do you ever do that where you just spontaneously buy something off an ad?
I do it all the time.
I
And
try
then
not to because so many
I,
are
I
scams.
do it all the time. Yeah, I get that too. And then I'm the worst return guy of all time. I don't like returning anything. So
Well,
I'll
I
just
don't
kind of
think when you order
bite the
off
bullet.
the internet and there's all that shipping and stuff, it's
Yeah.
really not beneficial to return anyways. But this is a lip plumper and we have been using this obsessively. And it is, make sure you only get it on your lips because it really does give you a good sting. But I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm addicted.
So it really works. Like it makes your lips.
It's not like you go, it's not like you have injections or anything like that. But I do have little fine lines and so it just gives it that little extra sting and it feels good. I don't know, it feels like it's doing something, and isn't that more important?
All right, I have a question for you on this. Did you ever think there'd become a time where you'd be concerned about the size of your lips, or what's become really big is women's, behinds? That the bigger behind has become a thing.
Well, I always had a big behind, so I'm happy to have it. Bring it, because now my butt is in fashion. Whereas when I was doing Baywatch in the 80s and 90s, I was considered big.
Really?
So yeah, I always had that big bubble butt. So no, I'm happy, and my daughter has the big bubble butt, so it's right on trend.
There you go. Well, I always wondered, did the Kardashians make it popular? Because my son and I were talking just yesterday about women that he knows that have had surgeries just for their butts. And I was like, man, I would have never guessed that would have happened.
Right. And how do you undo that? And they all look like they're wearing a dirty diaper, and all these things look exactly the same, don't they? You're like, did I just see that person on the last block? That they all look very similar. I think it's sort of a shame, but yeah, it has this weird droopy hard look to it. It's it's not,
almost like they haven't mastered the surgery yet. They haven't mastered it yet.
The shape. Yeah, and I don't know if they haven't mastered it by now. I don't know if they ever will, because it doesn't look that good, girls.
Yeah.
And boys.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I think it works a little bit better on men, to be honest with you, but the women, and it's what happens when you get older? That is really going to droop.
That's a good point.
Then,
That's a good point. Does it fall into your hamstrings? Yeah. Good point.
Yeah. So anyways, today we have a great guest. You know what I noticed? I have to slow down. I talk so fast. It's ridiculous. And in my mind, I think I'm talking really slow. I think I'm lagging all the time. There's such a disconnect between here and here. And
you know why you talk fast, right?
You feel the wind blowing through. When I watched back the episodes, I'm like, God. And so I apologize for that. And now I'm going to be conscious of this, and I'm going to slow the hell down.
You know why you're talking fast? Do you know the reason?
Why?
It's because you have a young daughter. Because she talks
No. When I was a kid and even acting, people would always tell me to slow down, quit rushing through everything. And I'm like, in my brain, I'm just I have the room waiting on what's next. That's what it feels like to me. And so I think I try to get my point out really fast, and I end up not choosing words properly. I end up sounding like I'm on fast forward. So I'm going to make a conscious effort to slow the heck down.
Let's see if you can do it. I tried it for years on the radio, and people always said the same thing about me. You talk way too fast. I always got the same thing, over and over again.
Let's see.
You're fine.
Okay. Today we have an amazing guest, and this is going to help you out a lot, Dave, too, with all of your questions about auditioning and where the industry is at. We have a good friend of mine who is a veteran at this, and it's just one of the nicest guys, because that doesn't always go hand in hand.
True.
So he's a gem. Paul Ruddy is with us. Hi, Paul.
Hello. Good morning.
Good
Hey,
morning.
Paul.
Thanks for the great introduction.
Well deserved. This is Dave. Dave, this is Paul.
Paul, very nice to meet you. I appreciate you coming on, number one. And for me, I always say I do this from a point of I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the industry. I love movies. I love TV. And I'm always curious to know how it comes together. And so sometimes I know I ask Nicole questions that she's like, how do you not know? I've known this since I was 5. But for me, it's everything's brand new. And I know for our audience as well, they're kind of curious too. How does it all come together?
Well, I think that's what got me in the business in the first place, because I was fascinated as a kid about how it all came together. And I grew up an only child in Pennsylvania, and just was obsessed with television and film, and to the point where I would write down the names of the people that were the writers and producers, and got every book you could on film, TV, theater. Just had a real fascination with it. And I went as far as collecting the TV Guide fall preview issue every year.
Yeah.
When it used to be this little thing, but the fall preview issue was like that thick. And I was excited every fall when that came out, because you could see all the new shows. And I thought it was a pipe dream to get into this business, because this is back in the day when there was no internet, and saying I wanted to work in show business was like, I might as well have said I wanted to go to Mars. So, but long story short, my first job in the industry was at a talent agency. It was Abrams Artist, which is now A3. And I applied for the job from a copy of Variety that I got from a newsstand in Pennsylvania. And it had talent agency in Beverly Hills looking for trainees for agent trainee program. And it was that's all it said. It didn't say the name of the agency. And I faxed my resume in, and I ended up getting the interview, and I got the job. And I was ill prepared because I didn't have a place to live here. It all happened within like a week. I had nowhere to live. I had no clothes out here. I had no car, but I made it work. And I was determined to make it work. And it was probably the most important job that I've had since I got in the business 24 years ago. That was 24 years ago. That was in 1999. Actually, it was this month. And so it's 24 years this month. It was I tell anybody that wants to break into this business, a talent agency is probably the best route to go initially, because you're dealing with everybody. And they were a full service agency. So they were dealing with not only actors, adult actors and child actors, but also writers and directors and producers. They had a voiceover department. They had a commercial department. So they were all over the place in terms of the industry. And so on a daily basis, I was dealing with actors and casting directors and producers and directors, and really was trying to be as much of a sponge as I could. And I stayed there for about a year. And then I went to the Gersh agency, and I was there for 2 years. And one of my bosses there randomly said to me one day, "You're on the wrong side of the fence. You have a really good brain for actors." And it was from all the years of devouring TV and theater and movies. And and he said, "My friends are casting a pilot. You should sit down and meet with them." I met with them, and the pilot was a show called Scrubs for NBC, and they hired me as their assistant, and that was in 2001. And that was my official start in casting.
Wow. How intimidating was it when you first walked in, like first day on the job, probably first month on the job, knowing that being surrounded by that, like your dream people?
It was, well, the first job was probably the scariest, the Abrams job, because I really thought I knew what I was doing, and I didn't know a thing. I had a breadth of knowledge about actors, and I kind of knew how the industry worked, but I didn't. And that job was, they call you floaters. So you're not assigned to a specific desk. So imagine going to work each day and not knowing what your job is. And that was my job that first year. It was one day I'd be, it depended on who was out sick or on vacation or what, or somebody quit. So they'd stick you on different desks. So the one day I'd be on a agent that did commercials, the next day voiceover, the next day children's. So it was dealing with different personalities and learning how to deal with different personalities, and some were very difficult.
Yeah, I was gonna say, those are days where like you get something thrown at you if you did something wrong, right? I mean, not to like call Gersh out, you know, in particular. I'm just saying in general.
No, the show in Entourage was very much representative of sort of the environment then. I don't think it's that way now for many reasons. I think the Me Too movement changed a lot of stuff, but there was still, I was sort of the tail end of the old school of doing things, and it was sort of, it was cutthroat. It's not that it isn't, it's not a day at the beach now, but there was, I witnessed some verbal abuse and in some instances physical abuse. Thankfully, I wasn't the recipient of it, but you know, and that was tolerated. But thankfully, and it wasn't. I'm not specifying the agencies I was at. It was the various jobs I had over the years that you saw stuff like that. But
yeah, can you imagine being like young and moving out here, moving to LA from your hometown, and you just say one thing wrong and the phone comes flying at your head, or like your lunch comes flying at you across the room? Like, you have to really be a tough cookie.
You really, no, you have to, the first thing I was told was you have to have a thick skin, like elephant skin. Yeah. And it's true. And it's every facet of the business. So, but I was lucky. The two places I was at, overall, I worked with really good people, and it was, I was really making an effort to learn as much as I could, as quickly as I could. And I was really intimidated by it wasn't so much the bosses, it was the other assistants that I was working with. A lot of people came in there very slick, and they were going to take over the town, and that intimidated me initially. And then I realized, I started building more confidence in myself, that the you know, my work ethic and my breadth of knowledge was going to really help me out more than anything else. And
work ethic, yeah, that's where it's at. Unless you're really, really invested in this industry, don't even bother. Don't waste your time, anybody's time.
No, because we're talking like when we were doing it back in 99, 2000, you know, right up until like 2010, 11, we were doing it the old way, which was hard copy scripts and making copies of scripts, having messengers deliver those scripts to actors having to go to the agencies. And we were talking about 14-hour days at the office. And then the first job on Scrubs, I can remember sitting in the office at 2:00 in the morning with piles of headshots and resumes that we were going through and sorting through them, because it was pilot season, and we were not only doing that show, but we were doing a pilot at the same time. And we had to be back at the office at 7:00 the next morning. And it was just an insane pace. It's a little bit different now. It's still, there's been a lot of progress made. Technology has made the job in some ways easier, in some ways more difficult. We're now on the clock 24/7 because of these things, because of phones. And that's made it a little more challenging, because you really don't have a break. But at the same time, that's part of the gig, you know? And I've talked to some younger assistants that bitch and moan about that, oh, they expect me to answer the phone on the weekend. Yeah, we do. Because these things, I can't, you know, tell a producer or director, oh, by the way, I'm done at 8:00 on Friday night, and you know, contact me on Monday morning. And when we have a pending offer or several pending offers, and we have a movie starting in a week, you know, if I did that more than once, I wouldn't be working in this business. So
funny that you say that. We were just cleaning out storage units, and my mom had probably thousands of copies of every headshot I've had through my career. And I'm like throwing them away, like, you know, my arms are full of them. And my daughter looks at me, she goes, why would you possibly have so many copies of the same picture? Because in her mind, like,
Yeah.
Who does that? And I tried to explain to her, like, every audition you had to take a hard copy of a picture and a resume everywhere you went. And not only was it like such a waste, but it was like, time consuming, expensive. Like, you have to store this crap. And so yes, technology, I think it's such a blessing. I'm not one of those older people that are against it. I'm like, it is so much easier to store in the cloud in a little external hard drive than those boxes and boxes of VHS and pictures.
Well, we used to create these binders on every project we did. So we would, all the people we brought in, you would put them in a binder with the notes and attached to it. And we had these huge, huge binders for every project, and you had to store those. And you refer back to those on a subsequent projects. Now it's all a database online where now I can just look at, the last 10 years of self-tapes all online by pressing a button. So it's much easier. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I hear so many actors complaining about self-tapes now. And it's become the reality in the business since the pandemic. And we were heading in that direction. But the pandemic expedited everything by about 10 years in a year. And it was out of necessity. And what I try to tell people initially is that if we didn't have the technology we had in 2020, this entire business would have been shut down for that year. And, like you and I, Nicole, have been around a long time. The way it used to be done, where it was in person and you're talking about bringing a headshot and resume in, that wouldn't have flown. And yes, people got taped, but the self-taping has only been maybe the last 7 or 8 years really predominant. And even back then, it was
like a special case, right? Like you were away on location, but they really wanted to see you. You would do something and send it to them, but it was very rare.
And even before that, if you had to tape somebody in the office, it was torture, because you had these big cameras and you had to transfer from a microcassette to a VHS or a DVD, and it took forever, and you had to messenger it to people. And so I remember doing a commercial, I'd say 5-6 years ago, and we were doing it over Skype, and it was a disaster. It spent all day, it kept crashing, and it was a real mess. And so I was very happy that we were where we were. And I remember in March of 2020, when all this crap started happening, a producer called me and he goes, "Have you ever used Zoom?" And I didn't know what Zoom was. I said, "What's that?" And I thought, my initial thought was an exercise class, like, because everyone's kind of exercising at home. And I'm like, is this some sort of like aerobics class that you do at your house? And so that's how much has changed in 3 years. Now that Zoom is part of the vocabulary, and that saved us. So we went to that, and then I was up and working again by June of 2020, self-taping people, and work really picked up the second half of the year. I was very busy. So what actors have to understand is it's part of progress. Things evolve. And there are a lot of pluses to it. You're not driving all over Los Angeles. You're not trying to find a place to park. You're not worried about getting a parking ticket. You're not sitting in the room with your competition who are trying to psych you out. You're not hearing your competition through the door and wondering, oh, they're doing it differently than I prepared it. Should I be doing it that way? And then after waiting for God knows how long, you can finally get in the room and it's, oh, okay, thanks, bye. And there seems to be this mythology that's been created about the room, about going into the room. I missed the room. I could sell myself in the room. By and large, that didn't happen. I like to chat with actors. I used to go out in the lobby and in the waiting room and talk with them and try to relax people as much as possible. But our time was so precious. We usually had really tight schedules to cram in as many people as we could. So there was very little time for chit chat. And when I hear actors go, I used to be able to sell myself the only way you sold yourself is if the performance was there. I don't care if you're the most charismatic, funny, enjoyable person. If you didn't deliver a performance, you weren't going to get the part. And now that's not to say that we don't look at that, the personality of the person. And that is a drawback, because I don't know the actors on more of a personal level than I did in the past, because you can't from doing a self-tape. But there are pluses and minuses to things.
You know what another plus is that I think actors somehow seem to forget about is, like you were saying, you do all that preparation. You're like in a mad sweat because you've been lost and you're late for your appointment, and you're there and you're rushing, and you go in the room and you choke.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Or you're like, and you're like, oh, why did I do it like that? I was practicing this way all day, and how come I did it like that? When you self-tape, you can just redo it. Yeah. And you can keep doing it until you send in the one that you like or feel comfortable with, So there's so many pluses in my eyes to it.
And I was talking to an actress friend of mine who was sharing a conversation she had with another actress, and this friend of hers said, well, it takes so much time, and it takes me 4 hours to get an audition together. And my response to that is if it's taking you that long, you need to find another profession to get into. Unless you're doing 20 pages of material, you need a ring light, you need a phone as your camera, you need a tripod, and you need a backdrop. All of that stuff costs under $100. And it's an investment in you. And that's all you have to spend. Now you're not having to make 10,000 copies of headshots because you don't have to bring them anywhere. So there's a lot of savings. And now there's thing floating around that's absurd that we should pay actors to audition.
Yeah. I read that.
So if we're looking at that as the audition as a job interview, you tell me any other business, any other industry where you get paid to go to a job interview. I mean, they'd laugh you out of the room.
There was a thing I remember, if you were back on like your third or fourth callback and you were there a certain amount of time, they did compensate you. Mm-hmm. That was always a thing.
And that was always followed too. And that makes sense. But to pay somebody to audition is ludicrous.
Yeah.
I can understand it if you're bringing people back over and over and over and over again. And there are provisions in place for that to protect the actor. But this idea, what it would result in is offer onlys for everybody. We'd just be making offers, and there would be far fewer auditions. That's the other thing I wanted to talk about with the self-tapes. I can see exponentially more people now. It's much more efficient. It's much more productive. So if I could see 30, 40 people in a day in person, I can now set up 300 people. And it makes it much more equitable for people. And I've discovered a lot of fresh faces that I wouldn't have seen otherwise if we were doing it the old way, because you had to be really specific about who you were bringing in and very careful because you had limited spots to fill. And, and there was days where we would have an entire day and come up with nothing. It was a wasted day. No one worked, and you'd have to go back to the drawing board and set up more people. And it just took so much more time. So producers saw how much more efficient this is, how much more productive it is, how much more choices they're getting. And they're not going to go back to the old way. They're not going to pay for offices. This is my office. You're looking at it. All of my colleagues now are working from home, and they're not going to put it in a budget all of a sudden. We're not going to go back to, okay, we're going to pay for an office and we're going to pay for this and we're going to pay for that. That's not the way that works. Yeah. That ship has sailed.
Yes. And that's good for you. I mean, I would love that I'm kind of in the same position. Yeah. I really don't even have to leave the house. I can have my pajama bottoms on, you put a blouse on and do an audition and go right back to bed. I mean, it's like, I think it's the best of both worlds. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, Paul, kind of curious. Sports has been my background, and so I deal with a lot of major league teams who will ask me, "Hey, who have you seen? Is there somebody in the area you've come across in the last year?" And they'll ask my opinion on if there's a player that maybe they should take a look at to possibly draft. For you being in this business for a long time, how quickly can you look at something and say, "This person has it, possibly has it, has a zero chance"?
There's instances where you know instantly that you go, whoa. There's a kid I cast in a movie last year that he's doing a soap opera right now, and he's just starting out, and he's phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And I cast him in a film, and he's so beyond his age in terms of his technique, and it's really impressive to see that. And they don't come around that often. You see people that are good, but this kid is like at a different level, and I think he's going to go really far. And you know, and then you see people. I've seen people that are now on major series that came through, you know, my office or tape for me. That, you know, there's sometimes you see it immediately, and then sometimes you see people who grow and evolve and get better. And I've seen actors at the very beginning of their careers that were as green as can be, and they worked at it, and they studied, and they worked hard at it. And you have to be in class, you have to study. And those people, you know, so there's a number of them that have gone on to a lot of success. And, you know, and then there's actors that you just, a lot of it is
in class for 4 years and their auditions are still the same.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's so much luck that plays into it. You know, there's people that are really good, and I've seen a lot of people that I wasn't able to hire, and they were really good. And you're dealing with a director who has a different opinion, or a producer, and or a sales team or whatever. And they don't see it. And, you know, I remind them of it sometimes when that happens. There was an actress, I'm not going to say who it is, but she's exploded in the last couple of years, and she was the director's 7th choice. And she was up for an award a couple of years ago, and he called me the night of the awards, and he's like, "He would choose my 7th choice." And why didn't I listen to you? And I said, yeah. So, yeah.
And also, don't you think sometimes it's like certain parts are like meant for you? Like you might be great, but that might not just be your part. That might not be your role, right?
Yeah, and that's
the right one comes along where people go, oh, okay.
And you can't obsess over it. You gotta, the only thing you can do is do your best and put in the work and do your homework and go in there and do your best. And then forget about it. And it's easy for me to say that because it is, you're bringing so much of yourself to it, and it's personal. But the only way to cope is to think of it that way. And it's not a fair business. And a lot of luck and timing comes into play. But the unpredictability of it is also exciting too, because your life could change tomorrow. One part can change everything for you. And so that's pretty cool.
That's funny that you say that, because like I hate living in the unknown. Like that unknown area just gives me anxiety, like as an adult now. It didn't when I was younger. But I had been doing it for so long that I would do that, what you say. I would go on the audition and then I would forget about it. And then I would have other actor friends that would go on an audition and would be out, and they'd be calling their answering machine every few minutes to see if there was a message. And I was like, gosh, isn't that driving you crazy? And then, but when I would see them like get the offer or get the call back or whatever it was, like right away, I was like, maybe there's something to that where they're like conjuring the energy, like they're manifesting it.
Yeah.
I always get like torn, like, do you sit there and focus and like, you know, wish it to happen, or do you go in and you forget about it? So I think for me, I'm with you on the forget about it. Otherwise, I will drive myself completely insane and lose all my hair. But there's like 2 methods that I've seen of people that do that. And I always find that very interesting. But that's a life thing too, right? I mean,
it is. And I think a good thing for people to know is the audition is the victory in itself. I put out 2 roles a couple weeks ago on a film, and within one day I had 10,000 submissions for 2
Wow.
characters. So if you get the actual audition, that's a victory in itself out of 10,000 people. And, and if you get the call back and you're close, that's a victory in itself. Now, a callback, yeah, it's not the part, but if we keep bringing you in for things, it means we like you. And we just have to find the right fit for you. It doesn't mean, oh, he's brought me in 6 times and I never get the part. He must not like me. Well, yeah. And I'm only as good as you guys are. So I won't get hired if I keep bringing in lousy people. They're not going to hire me again. So we're on your side. We're trying to make sure that you do your best and that you hit a home run every day. And,
right. Well, what if you're somebody, you got the audition once, right? And then you're not getting the auditions anymore. I think you sort of can take those signs too. You need to read the room, so to speak, is that, yes, if you're being called back or you're still at least getting auditions, that is constructive. That is good. You can tell you're doing something right. If you're just never getting the auditions anymore, and then you can start to think like, let's try something else, right?
Yeah, or that's a sign where a lot of times actors, well, I need to change my headshot. No, it might be. Usually the answer to that question is I'll ask that actor that, if I'm not getting called in on anything. Well, are you taking classes? Well, no, I can't afford it. Okay, well, then figure out a way to afford it.
But then they'll go color their hair or get some dramatic haircut thinking that's going to make a difference, right? I bet you see that all the time.
No, it's not going to change the performance you give. And so I think you have to be in class all the time. And there's ways of getting seen. There's showcases in town. There's theater. I cast theater all the time. Involve yourself in that area. People that attend theater out here, well, it's not a money-making endeavor for actors. It can be very beneficial because people that attend theater out here are people that will hire you or represent you. Agents, managers, casting directors. We go to theater all the time. And I write down names of people that I see in shows that I like and try to bring them in on things. And
theater is fun. Theater is it's like it's kind of the same experience I had doing a sitcom that doesn't really exist like that anymore, where it's not tedious. You rehearse and you rehearse and you get to do it. You go through it once in front of a live audience, and that energy, there's something to be said about that is just I don't think people really give it the credit that it's worth, because it really is a great exercise and a great experience.
When you listen to him talk and you talk about going through the auditions, is it all stuff that you relate to, or is a lot of it, does it come back to where it's a little bit painful of the bad stuff where you don't get we thought maybe I did a great job in an audition and I didn't get a call back?
No, it's great memories. And it reminds me like, oh yeah. And I love that other people, talking with other people that remember those days, because it was hectic. It was a lot. Yeah. An audition meant, it took a couple days. You had to prep, then you had to spend that day to get there. And like as women, we take longer to get ready. Hair's involved, makeup's involved, wardrobe's involved, and we overthink things. And, it's just really, it's a lot. And now it's so much simpler. And I think that I lasted so long in this industry because I don't get heartbroken over not getting a part. Yeah, there's some where you're like, oh, I really, really wanted that. But, you have to know that you're going to get what's right for you. And this isn't just in the industry, this is in life, right? You get what's planned out for you. There's you go where there's always a reason why something happens or doesn't happen. And as long as you can continue to remember that and believe that and just know that everything's going to be okay, everything works out, it's sort of just a good life lesson. You go on these auditions, it's throwing darts. It's, you go on hundreds before you book anything. And that's the nature of the beast.
You said something interesting as far, to me at least, when you said you practice it one way, okay? And you think in your mind, I'm going to go in and I'm going to audition it this way. This is the notes I've put down on my paper about this is where I'm going to show, energy. This is where I'm going to show sadness. My voice is going to go up and down. Whatever I'm going to do, I have a plan before the audition. And then as you're doing it, it's not coming out the way that you had practiced. And so I think everyone can relate to that.
So we lost everybody for a second. I apologize, but we are all back. Technology, you love it, you hate it.
That's right. Paul, let me ask you a quick question for me on the outside, because you mentioned here you are, a person from Pennsylvania. You look forward to the TV guide. As you're saying that, I was the same guy. I was one of those TV guide guys that was always interested, especially the fall preview. And I'm still one of those guys that gets excited about the new shows that are coming out. And now I'm worried about this writer strike on my show's going to come out on time and everything else. And we'll ask you about the writer strike. But for Nicole and for you, who you had a passion for this, is a reason why you got into this. Are there days that you remind yourself of, hey, this is why I love it? Or the first time you are on a set where you look around and going, I'm here. You're like, all my dreams are coming true right now. And today's the day.
Yeah. No, it can be a really stressful job. No question about it. It can be really, but I'm not digging ditches. I'm not working in a coal mine. I'm doing something I love to do. A lot of people don't love their job. I love my job. And there are times where I pinch myself, where I'm like, I can't believe I'm in this situation, or I've met this person, or, and it's not just meeting actors, but I've met some writers that I grew up watching, that wrote wonderful TV shows, and picking their brains about their job. And it's pretty cool. There's a lot of moments where I'm like, I can't believe I'm doing this. And so yeah, it never loses that allure. And it gets me through days that are long weeks that I have, where I'm like, oh God, this is difficult, because a lot of our job is navigating personalities that I found over the last 24 years. It's managing personalities, whether it be actors or agents or managers or producers or directors. And we're kind of the middlemen, and we're trying to, make everybody happy on each side. And there's times where I worked with a lot of the same people over the years, and that's the case with a lot of my colleagues. You get in with a producer or director, and you develop a rapport, and you work with them frequently. There's a lot of loyalty in the business in that respect. But then every now and then you'll work with somebody where you just want to blow your brains out, that they're not collaborative. They don't understand what our job is. They micromanage everything. They don't trust that they hired you to do a job, let you do the job, that sort of thing. And
to speak to what Paul's saying, this is not to be taken lightly, because having produced the documentary, people, even when it's collaborative, people are, especially artistic people like this, they are difficult for no reason sometimes. Like, really, does it really have to be that difficult? And 50 phone calls when it just should have been okay from the beginning. People are very hard to deal with in this industry. These are not always like the most rational, down to earth people. So hats off to you to deal with that every day, all day.
Well, I think this is about 10 years ago. I worked with this director, and the first time I met him, I thought, okay, you're either going to sort of get engulfed in his neuroses, or you're going to just stay calm and happy. And because every day he looked like he wanted to kill somebody, and everything was negative. And I thought, I'm either going to go down that path for the next month, or I'm going to try to be as calm and rational as I can. So I would walk in every day and I'd be putting on the biggest act under the sun. I should have won an Emmy, where I'd just be all happy and isn't this great and all that. And what ended up happening is it would alter his mood a little bit, and instead of altering my mood. So, and I was exhausted at the end of the day, because it was putting on a performance, but it got me through the day, and it got me through the project. And so artists can be egotistical and bratty at times, and I can be very stubborn about when I have an idea, and I'm not being heard. And so I think that the happiest experiences I have are the ones that are collaborative, where everybody's ideas listened to and respected. And I remember, this goes back like 12 years ago. We're doing a movie that never got made, and we had it was a great role for a young actress, and the producer was coming up with all these names that were the ones you would expect that we would never in a million years get. We didn't have the budget for it. They're out of the realm of reality. And I'd known an acting coach, and his client was a singer who was trying to transition into acting. And he said, if you have anything that's coming up, she really wants to get her feet wet in that world. So I said, okay. And I brought the name up to the director, and he said to me in no uncertain terms, I don't want you to ever bring that name up to me again. I would need an actress, not a celebrity. Well, that singer is Lady Gaga.
Oh my gosh.
When she was nominated for the Academy Award, I sent him a note and I said, is she an actress now? And we would have gotten her back then, likely, because she had done nothing acting wise before that in terms of professional acting. What he didn't get was everything she was doing up to that point. She's a performer, and she had studied and she had learned acting, but her concerts were performances. It was very much like Cher and people that preceded her. And Bette Midler is another great example of, and but he didn't see it. And when I run up against that, it's frustrating. But then I will rub their noses. You missed the boat on that one. So
is it tough sometimes being the bad guy? Like, everybody wants, their dream. I mean, everybody you're talking to, everyone who sends you something, they saying, look, when I present this, I'm going to get this role. I mean, they're figuring in their head, I would not take the time to do this unless I'm going to get a shot. Is it tough being the bad guy?
Yeah, it's tough to give people bad news. And on the other end of it, it's great to give people good news. It's a job that, we're not brain surgeons, but we're not curing cancer, but we're affecting lives in a positive way. And what frustrates me is that so little acknowledgement we get for that we really aren't the enemy. We are not the person preventing you from getting the job. Most of the time, we're the ones that are fighting the most vigorously for you. And we're the ones that you're seen by the directors and the producers because of us. We filter through the names that come in and bring you in and then send our selects to them. They don't see them otherwise. And there's a misunderstanding that all producers and directors know all the actors. Most of the time, they don't know who anybody is. They're more concerned about the money aspect of it and getting the movie made or the show made. And it's up to us to say, this is the person that's right for this. And I've gotten into vigorous debates with people about this. So we're not the enemy, but it's terrible to give people bad news. It really is. I just wish there was a better understanding among the acting community of what we do, because we get often bashed, and we're blamed for this whole self-tape thing. That this is our laziness, as we don't want to be going into an office anymore like everybody else. There are no offices to go back into. We don't have them, and that was happening before the pandemic. So that's one of my colleagues has an expression: if you want, actors only have two complaints: when they're working and when they're not working. So you can't please people all the time. And but I was watching the SAG Awards a couple months ago, and one of my colleagues called me on the phone and he said, "Are you watching this?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "What's stunning to me is this was 3/4 of the way through the show." He said, I've seen people get up on that stage and thank Aunt Sally from Poughkeepsie, their third grade teacher, the janitor, and the caterer, everybody but the casting director. There wasn't a single casting director acknowledged. And I said, well, let's see what they do at the Oscars. Same thing. No one was acknowledged. So we're often forgotten about. Once they get the part, people forget about us and they move on. And there's a great documentary that's on Netflix called Casting By. And I tell people to watch that because it really gives an insight into our job and what we do. And, you know, it's an art form. I really believe that a movie rises and falls on the cast. You can have the greatest script in the world. You can have the greatest director. If you have a lousy cast, it sticks out like a sore thumb and the movie doesn't work.
Yeah.
And you can elevate material. And I say this with humility, but I've had directors tell me this. I've taken stuff that was crap and made it a lot better because of the work that the actors put into it. I just got a note from a director yesterday that he said, look, we had a mediocre script, but we got an exceptional cast put together. And he said, this is an eminently watchable movie now. He just watched a rough cut of it. So it's, you know, we serve an important function. And to that end, I hope in my lifetime we see an Oscar for casting. There's an Emmy for it, but
there's no category, right? Because you were saying that, and my wheels started turning. I'm like, you're right. You guys are completely forgotten about.
The other group in this business that's ignored at the Oscars are stunt people. There should be an Oscar for stunts, especially in this day and age when every other movie is a blockbuster, stunt-laden movie. So those two categories should be addressed.
100%. Oh my gosh. Oh, I feel terrible that I never even thought about that before, but you are so right with that.
Yeah.
So important. Oh my God, that's embarrassing.
And hopefully that'll change. You know, change takes time, and you know.
Here's something I'm curious about as far as when you're sitting there and you're putting people together, and you know, you could take two massive stars. Let's say George Clooney and Julia Roberts in Ocean's 11. So you have two big stars that obviously can carry their own weight. But when you put them in Ocean's 11, you could feel the love interest. Like to the audience, it came out that, you know, there's a connection there. Yet you look at Brad Pitt, who's a tremendous actor as well, with Julia Roberts in the movie The Mexican, and it seemed like it never matched. And you're going, how does this happen? And when you're sitting in your casting, so you can't be only looking at just one individual. You have to think, how are they going to play off with everyone else you've already casted?
Yeah. It's every piece matters, and to that end, I tell people to look at the movie Tootsie, the Dustin Hoffman movie from 40 years ago.
Just watched it last week.
That is perfectly cast in terms of down to people that had one line that are memorable in the movie. And when I watch something and waitress number 3 stinks in the scene, it takes you right out of the film. So every part should be looked at as you got to cast people that are on the same level playing field as your leads. In terms of chemistry, I'm casting a play right now, and we're doing chemistry reads on Friday. Now we've already done self-tapes, and then we're doing we did callbacks last week in person, because theater is a different animal. And I think by and large, you're going to see more and more in-person casting for theater. It's impossible to cast a play without putting people in a room together. It's really hard, because these people are going to be spending months together. And if you get the wrong match, the whole show's not going to work. So on Friday, we're doing chemistry reads where we have these individual actors that made it through the first 2 rounds that on their own might be fine, but we got to see if they work together, because I've seen that happen on films and TV shows where you get 2 individual actors that are great, and then you put them in the room together and there's nothing. And you got to make sure that works too. I've had a good success rate with that, though. I've done a lot of Lifetime movies, and the couples that I've paired up have ended up couples in real life, a number of
Really?
them. So it's kind of interesting to see how that happens. There's a couple that I cast in a movie in 2020, and they're together now, and so that's sort of fun. So I'm
I lost a job that way.
really.
What do you mean? What happened?
I was cast in Starsky and Hutch, and I won't say which actor, but I flew back. I flew into Hawaii from Hawaii to LA to do the big cast chemistry read, and that actor saw me, and he had been hitting on me, and I blew him off. I just blew him off, and like there just was no interest, and it just was like I wasn't going to lead him on, and I'm not going out with you because you're so and so, and I just maybe I could have been nicer, but I just blew him off, and he was like, I have no chemistry with her,
Oh,
Wow.
and they gave it to somebody else, and I mean, if that's what you're looking for, and you don't have faith in my acting that I can act chemistry and do all that, when it's a different scenario, this isn't real life. But a lot of that comes into play, a lot of, especially men, and they want like the girls who are swooning over them in real life, and they want that on set too. And I'm not that girl. I'll never be that lady. But yeah, I lost a job that way.
well, and really good actors can create amazing chemistry.
Yeah.
And I know situations over the years where the two leads hated one another, and on screen they sizzled. They were fantastic, and I'm sure that's more common than we know. Where there's situations like that, where on camera they are a dynamite together, but they can't stand each other off camera.
Yeah.
So
That love-hate is a very thin line, and it can just cause electricity in either direction. Something you said earlier, though, when you were saying like waitress number 1, waitress number 3, and they have to be as good. George Cukor, I worked with him, and he said to me, I remember he said to me, there's no such thing as a small part. There's only small actors.
mhm.
And it really stuck with me because he said it's so much better to be in a small part in a great project than have the lead in a terrible project.
Mhm.
And that really rang with me. And I was like, yeah, because you can now put that on your resume, this great project on your resume. You got to work with all these talented people, and your job is easier. When you are the lead in like a crap project, you've got the weight of that on your shoulders. Your name is going to be attached to that. And I think a lot of actors don't really get that, or at least they didn't used to. And it was always about like, how many lines do you have this week? And, what part is it and everything. And so I just wanted to say that because you mentioned it, and it is so very important.
Well, yeah, and it's a smart agent and a smart manager will see that and find the actors that have the longest careers, the most longevity, are the ones that aren't always the leads. They do character parts, they do smaller roles, and if you find a script that's an ensemble where you're not the main character, great, you know. And that's smart strategy with your career, to not always. I remember early on, I was working. I think it was the second job I had, and there was an actor that was doing a string of just the same movie over and over and over again. And I remember they had an offer for a film where he would have been like a small role, but it was surrounded by wonderful actors and a great director. And the manager scoffed at it because the money wasn't a lead money. It was a scale offer. And I was really naive at the time. And I also had no clout. I couldn't say you're wrong. I've been in the business for all of like 3 minutes at that point. But that actor's career disappeared after a couple of years because he was doing the same thing over and over and over again. He just faded. And I think you want to go into this with the idea you want to have longevity. And, I talked to a character actor several years ago that has been in the business for 60 years. And he said I pulled every string I could and didn't pass up on offers. And he said, somebody asked me once, like, well, you make some great choices. What's your decision-making process? And he said, it's, I have to pay my mortgage. I have to pay my bills. And he said, if it dried up in TV, he said, I'd look to theater. If it dried up in theater, I'd do commercials. But he said, I kept myself working all these years. And there's something to be said about that. And work is work, and work begets work. I don't think I've ever done a class or a seminar where I didn't use that expression, work begets work. That's how I get jobs. We're gig workers like actors are. And, I still do commercials. I do student films. I do short films, and at the same time doing series and whatever, because you're meeting new people. I met this is a really good example of that. I was living in Westwood several years ago, and one of the other tenants there was a grad student in the film program. And we met in the hallway doing laundry, and he was talking about his project, and this was right before Christmas. And I said, you need help with casting? He goes, well, I wouldn't ask you to do it. We don't have. And I said, well, I'm on break the next couple of weeks. There's nothing going on. I'm happy to help you. So we did this short film, and it got in a lot of festivals. And a couple of years later, he calls me and he said, we got the money to make this into a feature. And he hired me to cast it as a feature film. So, yeah. So I don't think passing up work is not a smart thing. And certainly not.
If you're chasing the paycheck in this industry, you're in it for the wrong reasons. This is about an experience and being artistic and doing what you love and what you're passionate about, contributing any which way you can.
Yeah.
I love theater because, the actors will also help with set design, and you can really kind of, a lot of times, have your hands in all of it and truly understand what it takes to put on a production. And I think that's amazing. Also, I wanted to point out that, Paul, you teach a class, right?
I teach classes all the time. I do one with TVI Studios. I have another one coming up next month. I do 4-week classes with them. So I do different things each week.
Tell us where we can find that for anybody that wants to.
It's TV, like television, TVI Studios. And you can go on their Instagram page, and there's a link to the class. But they're great. And the first week we do a Q&A, and I get to know all the actors in the class. And I had a couple actors go, well, I thought we would get right to the scenes. And I said, well, there's a strategy to doing it this way, because I talk about myself, and then we do a Q&A, and then I go through each actor, tell me your background. Everybody gets comfortable with each other. So then when we do the scenes in the subsequent weeks, people aren't as nervous. There's more of and everybody figures out. I haven't done a single class where there isn't a connection. Somebody's gone to the same school, or they know so-and-so or whatever. So there's connections there. Then we'll do 1 week where we do comedic scenes and we do critiques. The next week is dramatic scenes and critiques. Then we do sort of mock callbacks and cold reads. So it's a lot of fun, and I find a lot of actors through that. And it's at the end of the day, it's very educational, I think, for actors, because what I'm trying to offer is not just what we're looking for, but also giving some insight into what we do as casting directors and the business aspect of this industry. I worked with a casting director 20 years ago who said, it's called show business. It's not show friends. It's not show fun. And actors learn the show part. They go to a conservatory, or they take classes off of a great acting teacher, but oftentimes they don't learn the business part of it. The business part of it is just as important. It's how to navigate yourself through this shark-infested industry. And, most of the time actors come out here and they're clueless. And then they're listening to other actors and getting really bad advice. And, I ran into an actor a couple weeks ago, and he said, I'm dropping my manager. And it's the manager I have a great deal of respect for, and she works really hard. He's only been doing this for like a year. And he said, she's not getting me any work. And I said, well, there is no work right now. Well, what do you mean there's no work? And I said, there's no work. There's strikes. What strikes? And I said, you need to go on deadline every day and know what's going on in your own business. And he didn't know anything about these strikes. He said, well, when did this?
What rock does he live under?
It's shocking to me how often this happens. The day the writer's strike was announced, I had about a dozen messages from actors I know going, what's this about a strike? Oh. And so, yeah. And I think if you want to talk about this real quick, we can discuss the strike. Dave, if you want to get into that.
Yeah, I'm curious to know. I mean, how does this affect me as a viewer? And I'm a big fan of even nighttime TV. So I watch Jimmy Kimmel every night. Well, there's no Jimmy Kimmel.
Well, there won't be any Jimmy Kimmel until this is settled. Yeah. By and large, you're not going to know anything if you watch streamers. Mostly, if you're watching Netflix and Hulu and HBO Max, they have enough product that this could go for a year and the viewer won't notice it. The impact it's going to have is tremendous. It's already had it in this business. It's slowed down exponentially since the beginning of the year. It's been very, very slow because they were anticipating this happening. And it's a waiting game now. And the directors were threatening to strike. The directors sat down since February and went back and forth and hashed out an agreement. And I'm hoping the writers can do the same thing. These issues are very important issues. They're not, it's mostly about streaming and residuals and proper pay for people, a living wage for people. They're not going to get everything they are asking for. But a lot of the actor stuff is also tied in with what the writers want. It has to do with residuals and wages and what have you. The AI thing, everybody keeps talking about that. I think there's a panic about that. First of all, AI is here. It's not going to uninvent itself. So we're going to have to deal with it somehow. Do they need to regulate it a little bit? Yeah, I think so. But I don't think there's a lot of hyperbole out there. There's a lot of fear. I've seen actors posting, we're going to be taken over by AI. They're not going to replace actors with AI. You're not going to be replaced by a cartoon character version of yourself. That's silly. At least not in our lifetimes that's going to happen. But and I think we need to deal with the most important issues are trying to get a living wage where we can still have a middle-class actor. My fear is that if this drags on too long, like other strikes have, like the 2007-2008 strike, the writer's strike, it opened up the door for more reality shows. The industry's not going to come to a halt because of this. They're just going to find other avenues. So this is where we got the Kardashians and all the housewives and all those shows, and they're still here, and more game shows, and you're going to see more of that in prime time if this continues. And as far as the actors are concerned, they're going to use actors overseas. They're going to use actors in Canada. They're going to do non-union stuff, so that will continue as well. My fear is, and I want to reiterate this, I support what they're fighting for because it affects me too. I mean, everybody in this business, with the exception of the top dogs, are pretty much underpaid and overworked. That said, I've been around 24 years and I've seen the collateral effects of these strikes. And an actor strike will affect tens of thousands of people. And whether they vote yes to strike or not, we're already in a situation where, say they say no, we settled, we're not going to strike. We've already delayed production by months. So nothing's going to get going again until September. And that's a lot of people out of work. So when you say like Jimmy Kimmel and Jimmy Fallon and all those shows, they'll be fine, those guys.
Yeah.
But their crews aren't. the people that are working in hair and makeup and the rest of the crew, all of those people have no jobs now. And so I'm hoping it gets resolved fairly quickly. But
what's your gut on the actors going to strike?
I'm hearing it's going to happen. I mean, but you talk to 5 people in a day and you get 5 different, nobody knows anything. And they've done a media blackout now. So we're not going to know anything for a couple of weeks. But what bothers me is there's like a fervor among some younger actors for a strike, not understanding the repercussions of it. That this shouldn't be the first choice. It should be the last choice. That we should be sitting down. There should be fervor for them sitting down and negotiating this thing and hashing it out and getting it over with so that we can move on and get back to work again.
Absolutely.
Especially after what we've been through in the last 3 years.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, we don't need any more delays.
Yeah. So let's fingers crossed that we can get this thing
resolved
quickly and everybody's happy.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The streamers, they need to share. They're doing just fine. They need to share.
Absolutely. Paul, thank you so much for your time. This has been really fun.
Check out Paul, his Instagram too, Paul Ruddy Casting, because he does other podcasts that I tune into sometimes, and he also has that class if you want to hear more and all of his expertise. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. This was really fun. Really good to meet you, Dave, and thanks.
Very nice meeting you, Paul.
And I'll see you soon.
Talk to you later.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye.
That was really cool. That was for me. It was exciting. I got to ask you because obviously you've been around this your entire life. And I wanted to ask him, but I don't want to put him in a bad spot. Who has more? Well, you know what? Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But it's your show, so you can say I'm not answering that. So, I'm always amazed by the art of what you do. What people can do as far as acting and making you fall in love with the movie, the TV show, whatever it is, and take yourself out of it. That there are a bunch of camera crews there, and there's lighting people there, and there's so many things that are involved that when you fall into a storyline, all you think about is I'm watching 2 people talking. And there's an art to it. I mean, you guys are artists on what you do. So I've always heard this about men, and I don't know which actor said it, but he said, men can play 2 parts. They can play themselves and they can play their dads, and that's it. And then I see there's some great actors out there that I'm amazed they play. Obviously, it's not the same person, but I always judge it on how good of an actor or actress you are by do I fall into your character and forget that I'm watching so and so. I'm a huge Denzel Washington fan, but every time I'm watching Denzel, I'm watching Denzel in my head. Whereas Tom Hanks or Leonardo DiCaprio, I fall into the character, and I'm always amazed that they can get me to do that. And so I was in your opinion, again, you don't have to answer it if you don't feel comfortable. Who's more talented, men or women in this business? If you're going to just broad brush it, who has more range?
Whoa. I don't think that that's even a fair question. I think that it's equal. Now, men still do get paid more than women in this industry. So
that amazes me. Me.
It falls into the rest of life. I think it's starting to change, luckily. I would say I think women put up with a lot more by a lot. We put up with a lot more. So if you want to take the whole realm of things into consideration, I'm going to give it to women.
Yeah, I would too. I would too. Yeah, just and I know it's never fair to broad brush anything, but I was just curious to know, as someone that, is around talented people all the time, which way does it kind of go for you?
Well, isn't there a life saying too, like behind every successful man, there's a powerful woman?
I agree with that 100%.
So,
yeah.
Women have a way of sort of warming things up and bringing things together, sometimes smoothing things over, and buttering things up. So that woman's touch is very valuable.
I agree. All right, I want to knock through some of these questions. Again, this podcast is running a little bit long, but it was
Okay.
interesting. So, again, if you want to get on Nicole's mailbag, it's easy. All you have to do is go to perfectlytwistedpod.com, check it out right there, and you can check out your opportunity to ask Nicole questions. And we have some from Michael Van Zant, who wrote these in, and thought all of his questions were interesting. So I'm just going to use Michael's questions this week.
Okay.
How did you end up doing the Funny or Die video? And what was your experience like doing it?
Oh, okay. So the Funny or Die, the whole thing is kind of a long story, but I was doing a weight loss program. And so prior to it, there were some like doctored photos released into the tabloids. And it was, like I'm at the grocery store and there I am in my own backyard in a bikini, bent over, gut hanging out on the cover of the magazine. And the checkout lady looks at me. She goes, "You don't look like that. I mean, you really don't. You really don't look like that." I was like, "Oh gosh, okay. So I better prepare myself for what's inside if that's the cover." So it just was all these pictures on every tabloid that month of me that I was this just whale of a girl. So and how I let everything go. And so Funny or Die, we just sort of collaborated, and I was like, let's do something. And they were into it. We made the decision in like a couple hours. We met at a beach and we were like, let's think of something funny. And we came up with that these guys were drowning, but they didn't want me to save them because I was too fat. I wasn't the hot lifeguard that they were expecting.
Oh my God.
Oh, I know what it was. They were faking that they were drowning to get the attention of the hot lifeguard. But when I showed up, they were like, "Oh, no, never mind. We're fine. And then we decided, you know what, let them drown. Like, let's have them really. So then they really start drowning because they've been out there for so long pretending. So it was just a good poke fun at what was going on and to show what I really look like in live.
Good for you.
Action in my bikini. I wore the same bathing suit that was in all the pictures on all.
They do good.
And yes, I had gained some weight, but this is what happens after you have a baby and life, and just sometimes you do. But it wasn't anything as fully grotesque as what they were trying to portray me to be. And the people loved the video. It was really well received.
Yes.
It was voted, like #1 for that time period. And, anytime I can make fun of a situation, I'm going to do it, because otherwise, you just sit there and get defensive and feel bad about yourself. So you got to get ahead of it and, make some fun. So that's what we did.
It's funny because I'm alive, but I almost drowned at a beach once. But it was my first time in it was my first time in San Diego. This story is embarrassing as hell. But first time in San Diego, and there's a nude beach in San Diego. And so my friends, we're like 18, 19 years old. Hey, we got to go to the nude beach. And well, none of us are, going to be nude. We're just the pervs that want to go look at the nude beach. And if you've never been to a nude beach, don't ever go. 90% of them are guys, and they're in the worst shape of your life that you've ever seen. No one looks good at a nude beach. And I'm there with 3 of my friends, and I go in the water, and all of a sudden I can't get out of the water. The tide's taking me out. And I am doing the best I can to swim to get back. I cannot get back in. And I'm going for about 40 minutes. And I'm thinking, I'm going to drown. And then there's this naked guy probably about 15 yards away from me. And he says, "Hey, I can help you get out of the water. Do you want my help?" And I had to run through my mind, am I going to let some naked guy pull me out of the water in front of my friends? And I said, no. I go, I do not need any help. And I just literally like gave up. And the tide pulled me out. I was able to get out of the water. And I swear, I think I laid on the beach for an hour trying to catch my breath. But I told my friends, didn't you notice that I wasn't coming back in? Like, where were you guys? And then I told them the situation. And I said, I couldn't deal with you guys making fun of me the rest of my life that I had some naked guy pull me out of the water. And they go, oh, yeah, it would have been over for you. That you would have never forgot it. But it was one of those.
You're the guy we were making fun of.
Yeah, I was that guy. Somebody said it. I was like, I was that guy. I was too embarrassed. Oh my gosh. All right, Michael has question number 2. This is a question that comes in all the time, Nicole. Who is your current celebrity crush?
I don't normally have celebrity crushes at all, but I got to tell you, Kevin Costner is doing it for me. I mean,
In
as soon as I
Yellowstone?
started watching Yellowstone, I was like, are you kidding me? This man, and when he was younger, not so much. Now at his
Yeah.
age, oh my God, he's smoking hot. So Kevin Costner all day long.
You know what is funny about that? We just talked about people that fall into roles where I'm watching that guy. I always felt that way with Kevin Costner. Like I'm watching another Kevin Costner movie. He's always Kevin Costner, except in this role. In Yellowstone, he's a different character. To me, this is the best he's ever done. He's
I have
outstanding.
a feeling like he's playing more of himself in a way in this, because he's
Yeah.
very comfortable. Doesn't he live out?
I know he used to be an Orange County guy. I don't know where he lives now. He might be a Montana guy now, but he used to live in Orange County.
Making this up in my mind, but maybe I believe his acting so much. I thought maybe he is some sort of like ranch lifestyle guy, but yeah. No, he's
how about real estate in Montana has gone through the roof since that show? Yeah, it's amazing how many people are interested in Montana. Yes. Yeah. All right. Question number 3. Would you ever do another reality TV show?
I didn't think I would. I'm sort of in talks for something right now. I won't mention what it is or anything like that, but I'm considering something right now. We'll see. So I never say never to anything.
Good for you. That's a good attitude. I like it. All right. Now I can't wait. I'm curious. All right. Question number 4. Do you still talk to Christina Applegate?
I haven't spoken to her in a long time. I met Christina when we were like kids auditioning for things, and she was always she's only she's probably my same age or maybe a year older, but when you're young, you look up to people. She was always like the cool girl. She was always so pretty. And then, then we became teenagers, and she was, she's just always been so fun and so cool and so amazing. And then I did Married with Children, and she was so welcoming. And, it's nice when you walk onto a well-established set like that, when somebody, embraces you like that. So I haven't seen her in a very, very long time. I'm a big fan of hers. I watch her projects. I know she's having health issues, and, my heart goes out and sending her all the positivity. But no, I actually haven't spoken to her in a while.
It's funny you mentioned Married with Children. And first of all, about her, I've never heard anyone say anything negative about her, which is pretty tough in the kind of business you guys are in. Like, I've never heard anyone say horrible things about her. But Married with Children, I told you I was a fan of just going to different shows to watch how they're done. And some of them took forever. But Married with Children literally was a 30-minute show that took about 30 minutes. The only time they ever stopped was to, let's say, go to the shoe store. But otherwise, nobody ever screwed up their lines. There were never issues. Everyone on that set was so professional.
Yeah, so good. So good, so good. Such a fun set to work on. I did a spinoff, but it didn't happen. But yeah, what a crew, what a cast, the whole thing. Amazing.
All right, last question for you. What is your drink of choice? And I don't know if that means alcohol or if that means Diet Coke. I don't know what it means.
Water. Water is my go-to every day, all day. Cold brew. Cold brew is, especially the nitro cold brew. I mean, I'm in love. And if we're going to do libations, which I really try not to do, I'm a Prosecco girl. Prosecco.
There you go.
A nice Pinot Noir, but those days are kind of over for me. I don't can't hold it well. I just, I don't do well the next day. So water. Let's go with water. H2O.
I was just had this conversation with my son. I don't know if it's an age thing, but I can't drink one day and then start drinking like 5 hours later when the sun comes up. I have friends of mine that can still go 5 days straight and just drink and drink and drink on vacation, and I don't know how they pull it off. I just feel terrible.
On vacation and stuff like that. I would need a vacation from the vacation.
Yeah. I just feel terrible. I can't keep doing it. Yeah.
And you know what? For me, if I'm gonna like meet up with friends and do some Prosecco, it needs to be in the day.
Yeah.
It needs to be in the day, otherwise I'll probably fall asleep at the table, and I need a long time to recover. So, yeah, it's not the same.
That is funny. All right. So again, if you want to be involved in the Daily Mailbag, all you have to do is go to the website, check it out, and then look for Mailbag. Go ahead and submit your questions, and we'll get them on the show. So it was exciting.
I love these questions because they
I do too.
Yeah. Thanks for your write-in, Michael.
Absolutely. All right. So this show went a little bit longer than most, but again, that was entertaining to me as far
Yeah,
as so many questions I have about this business. And I was going to ask him, but it sounded like he kind of said it, that he reminds himself what he's doing. For you, do you ever go through it, Nicole, as far as thinking, man, here I am, I'm on a set, or I'm auditioning. This is why I love this business. This is why I'm here. This is my passion.
Yeah, for me, it really sort of happened when I took the long hiatus from it. And I was thinking, what's my next chapter? What am I going to do in life? And I started exploring other things, and the road leads me right back to what, because you also hear over and over, especially today, you hear, do what you're passionate about, do what doesn't feel like work. And really it's the only thing. And that's what's bringing me back into it, is that, yeah, that's what it's, where it's at for me. And nothing else. I think I'm interested in something else. And then I start to, put my feet in the water, and I'm like, boring. I'm over it. So it's the only thing that really just like, it doesn't feel like work. And it's always interesting. It's always fun. So
I'm so happy that, honestly, that it seems like you're showing more interest in going back into the business. So it's for me, being a friend of yours, I can see it. I can see that you're basically, your energy is starting to go that way. So I can't wait to see what's next.
My timing is really bad, as per usual, because everybody's going on strike.
Yeah, going on strike. Nobody's working. That's it. That's it.
Yeah, but at least it's there. Yeah.
There you go. Nicole, thank you so much. We'll do this again next week.
See you guys next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.